Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. So let's go ahead and get into why engagement efforts fail and what to do instead. Now, as always, as you are tuning in, please be sure to let me know where you are tuning in from. I absolutely love to know that you are here. I get messages from you all, but I want you all to interact here as well. So just say hello, or if you have questions, if you have comments, whatever the case may be, I would love to hear from you during this live stream. Okay, so why do engagement efforts fail and what to do instead? So, most conversations regarding engagement, they start with one question, and that one question is, how do we fix it? But here is the problem with that question. Everyone in an organization touches engagement, but there is no one party, there is no one person, there is no one group that controls it. And so, engagement is the one thing in the workplace where everyone is contributing to it, and we're always waiting for someone else to come in and fix that problem or to fix that issue. And so that is what we are going to be delving in on today, because we keep asking about how to fix engagement and we try to find solutions. But from what I've observed, is that a lot of times the solutions are based in motivation, which, I mean, when you look at a lot of the organizational development and the learning and development theories and trainings and practices, it falls under motivation typically, which is fine. But how can we take this and move a little bit further, create more progress? And so today, when we're looking at engagement efforts and why they fail, we are going to explore this a little bit further. So, today I want to focus on one part of the value triad, and that is perception. And perception is a huge reason why engagement breaks down. So, for those of you who joined me last week I introduced to you what perception was, and I also introduced to you performance and potential. And the three of these creates the value triad. So if you didn't get a chance to catch that live stream last week, be sure to take a look, and I'll link it here to this to the comment section here. But I also want you to be able to take a look. 15-20 minutes of your time throughout this week, so that way you can get a better understanding of how the value triad all works together. And we talked about perception, performance, and potential. But today we're going to spend some time, a little bit more time, focused in on perception and how that contributes to engagement. So, for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Lepore Lindsay, and I talk all things workplace value and engagement. And if you're like, well, what in the world is workplace value? Well, workplace value essentially is how any professional in the workplace is sharing their actions and sharing their efforts. And in doing so, they are creating workplace value if it is seen as being beneficial to the team or the organization that they work with. And that is essentially tied to engagement. And now when you think about that, like these actions and how it's about them being tied to the benefit of others, you may be like, well, maybe that's how perception falls in, and you would be right. So when we're talking about perception, one of the things that I want to highlight is that perception is not just about what you do. Like, that is one way that we can contribute and we can engage in the workplace, but that is not all of the story. There's two angles to this. There is how you see your value, so how you perceive yourself and the value that you have. And I truly hope that each and every one of you view yourselves as being someone who is truly worthy and always worthy, because you are. The second part of this is the perception of how others view you and how they view your contribution in the workplace. So essentially, we can have the same contribution and different interpretations of that contribution, and therefore we have a different outcome. You can take, for instance, let's say that there is an individual contributor at work and they get quiet, or you get quiet if you are that individual contributor. Well, a supervisor may look at this employee who used to be speaking up in meetings and who used to be sharing, and we see that they're quiet, and now we say, well, now they're disengaged. Now they're disengaging. That is their perception. And then we have the person who is gone quiet, and their perception is that they need to stop speaking up because they're continuously ignored. Another example is pushback, or oh gosh, not restraint. Gosh, y'all, what my brain is getting. Well, let's just stick with pushback. It starts with an R, and I'm gonna. It's such a simple word that I cannot think of right now. So we push back, right? And for some people, or for supervisors, leaders, you may see this as someone being difficult. They're difficult because they're always pushing back. They always have something to say. The individual contributor who is dealing with this situation, or even if it's a leader who is pushing back on it, what are the perhaps they see it as there are other broken parts in the system. There are other constraints. And so any changes would essentially create more challenges. And that is why they are pushing back. And then we have where someone may be potentially always consistent or not consistent. Well, they weren't consistent and now they are consistent. A supervisor can see, okay, this person is average. Like, this is what they do. This is what they do on a daily basis. They are a good employee, but it's average. That's their perception. And then the perception on the other piece is carrying more than is realized. Annette, it's important to notice employee behavior and respond to it as needed, which may mean just listening. Absolutely, Annette. Absolutely. That's so important. And that's the whole point of perception, is that there are two parts of it, right? You know the saying, there's two parts, or some people say there's three parts to every story. And this it's the same case when it comes to perception and engagement. There is a human level where the individual who is experiencing whatever they're experiencing, they're going to have their thoughts. But then we also have the assumptions of others, and that leads to oftentimes that mistranslation piece. And so when this happens, when it's consistently misinterpreted, when those conversations are not being had, as Annette mentioned, there's going to be that consistent misinterpretation, and that affects engagement. An analogy that I absolutely love using is, let me make sure we're good there. Yep. So, an analogy that I absolutely love using is, let's say we're in an environment where the greeting can be hello, it can be hola, it can be bonjour, it can be aloha, right? It can be anything. And on surface level, does it mean the same? Yeah, it's a greeting. It's a greeting that we use in the morning. But let's say that one person says hello and one person says hola, and one person says bonjour, and they don't know what each other are saying. Now, if I were to ask you, whose responsibility is it to translate? Some people may say, well, whoever needs something, or what is the language of the environment? But in this case, all of these languages are part of the environment. And in this case, Everybody needs something. And it's the same with engagement. Everybody needs something. For the individual contributor, they need to be recognized, seen, and valued, and know that their contributions and their efforts are something that is useful. For the supervisor, they need an engaged employee, someone who is going to be putting forth effort so that way the team and the organization can benefit. And so then the goal is we have to come to a unified understanding, because without it, it doesn't it it doesn't matter. We will keep seeing, when we look at the recent Gallup report, we'll keep seeing these trending low engagement scores because we're focusing in on the motivation when actually there is structure, there are systems, there is what is allowed, what's disallowed, and we're not going to know that unless we're having those conversations. So at this point, you're probably wondering, well, Lepora, thanks a lot for telling us what the problem is. What do we do with this? Where do we go from here? And y'all know I would not just present a problem and leave you be. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So here's the deal. As an individual, and we're going to talk about this from an individual contributor standpoint and also from a leadership standpoint, because there is no either or when it comes to engagement. There is a part that everyone plays. Now, do certain people or certain groups have more leverage? Absolutely, 100%. But we all play a part in the system, and sometimes it can be really hard to see it while you are in it. So I'm going to share with you what I have seen to be some really good questions that you can ask depending on what position you are in to figure out how either your behavior can change or maybe some conversations that you can have. So, as an individual contributor, one of the questions to ask is, besides myself, so you're asking this to yourself, besides myself, who does your contribution benefit? Besides myself, who does my contribution benefit? Sorry, you're asking this to yourself. And the reason for this is what I have seen is that a lot of times people are really good at certain skills and really good at certain abilities, but they don't take the time to connect what they do to the overall team or organizational mission. So maybe you're really good at writing reports, but the team doesn't need that right now. So asking that question, who else does it benefit? And then maybe even taking it a step further and asking, how do I know that they are benefiting? How do they experience it? The other questions that you can ask is, am I making my contribution easy to understand? Am I making it easy to understand? Now, for this one, and I kind of mentioned this one last week, but I'll share this briefly because I know my time is winding down here, is a couple of years ago, I went and asked colleagues that I was working with, hey, how do I best bring value? And I was so shocked at a lot of the responses because it was not what I thought or how I thought I best brought value. And it gave me that perspective outside of my own. Now, for those of you who are in leadership position, those questions are going to be a little bit different. One question that I have seen that absolutely is eye-opening for leaders is, what could I potentially be missing when it comes to engagement? What could I potentially be missing? When it comes to engagement and recognizing value, there are three things that leaders see. Well, sometimes they see it subconsciously and sometimes it's consciously. You recognize what is familiar to you. So what has been valuable in the past. You recognize proximity, as in who has proximity to you and what are they doing, and whether they work with you in your department or in other departments, but they constantly have access to you. You're going to constantly see what they're doing. And then you have the familiarity. Hold on. Proximity, familiarity, and visibility. Sorry, visibility is the last one. So what are we constantly seeing on a high level? And so what am I missing? Is there a potential that someone else could be contributing in a way where I see the outcome, but I don't know what all is being contributed before I see that outcome? That's just a starter question. And then also asking, am I only recognizing what's familiar, close to me, or visible? So, for both individual contributors and leaders, now when you start paying attention to how contribution is interpreted, you will begin to see a difference. Now, I don't want to say that these questions are going to completely be life-changing and change your organization just like that, because that's not how it works. However, it will provide you with insight into the patterns that are, or what the trends and the patterns that are there. And then that is where you can then take a step to figure out what is next. All right, y'all. I know this was a deep one today that we covered, but I hope that it was something that was beneficial, and I hope that it shifts how you think about engagement, because it is not it is not something that belongs to just one person or one group. It is something that belongs to all of us. And it's important to figure out what part we play or how our behaviors can influence the current systems and structures. It's not something that we do alone, it's something that we do together as a team. Now, remember two things. Remember to go back and watch the episode from last week if you still want to learn more about the Value Triad, which is performance, potential, and perception. And also, if something that I said made you think a little bit, or maybe shifts how you think about engagement, I would absolutely love the opportunity, be honored to work with you further. So feel free to reach out, send me a message, or you can send me an email at hello@leporelindsay.com. Y'all, this has been an absolute pleasure. I thank you all so much for your time. And remember this week, in every single thing you do, especially when it comes to engagement and how we perceive engagement, remember to stay adding value. All right, y'all, have a good one. Bye.